In the deepest fabric of the universe lies a mystery few dare to contemplate. Time is not a fixed line, but an infinite canvas where everything has already been written. Every moment we live, every decision we make, every dream we hold, already exists in a parallel reality waiting to be discovered. In this text, inspired by the visionary teachings of Joseph Murphy, we will dive into the art of rewriting the timeline. You will discover that nothing is lost, that everything has already been done, and that within you beats the power to access futures where abundance, peace, and purpose already belong to you. Prepare yourself for a journey beyond the illusion of clocks and calendars. Here, you will learn that the past can be transformed, the present is malleable, and the future is a realm where your thoughts are the supreme architects. This is not just a text. It is a sacred key to the creative power of your subconscious, the secret to shaping reality and becoming the absolute author of your destiny. It is already done. The only question is, are you ready to claim your perfect timeline? Most human beings walk through life with a broken compass in the pocket of their mind. That compass, which should guide them toward their center, constantly points to an accusing past, a heavy non-present, and a future that slips away. This is how they get disoriented. This is how they live confused, lost on a map they did not design, repeating paths they do not understand. But that broken compass is not the world's fault. It is the result of programming that turned time into a prison. And you have come here to remember that time is not your jailer. It is your tool. From childhood, we were taught that the past determines who we are, that the present is a struggle, and that the future holds the promise of redemption. But this structure is false. It is a collective mental construct, useful for external organization but destructive to inner freedom. Because when you believe the past defines you, you live as a slave to a false story. When you believe the present is only consequence, you inhabit it without power. And when you believe the future contains your salvation, you turn it into a carrot you will never reach. The purpose of this book is to dismantle that lie, not with theories but with applicable mental principles, not with vague mysticism, but with clear spiritual logic. You are not a creature of time. You are eternal consciousness experiencing time as a mutable stage, and from that place of authority you can rewrite your temporal experience, not to escape life, but to claim it. This book will teach you to see the past as a vibration you can erase, to inhabit the present as the only place where reality occurs, and to claim the future as an anticipated memory, not as desire, but as certainty, because everything is already fulfilled on the eternal level. All that remains is for you to remember it. Start today with this affirmation. I live now in eternal fullness. The past does not limit me. The future does not control me. I am creative presence in this holy moment. Repeat it with awareness, not to convince yourself, but to remember. And when the mind tries to distract you with its clocks, its calendars, its fears dressed as tomorrow, return to your center. Return to your inner compass, now calibrated with truth. Time does not rule me. I am the one who writes time. I am the author of time. Based on the teachings of Joseph Murphy, we've noticed that more than 80% of those who visit our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to keep creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1. Time is an idea, not a law. Anyone who has believed that time is an objective force, a straight line stretching from the past to the future, is trapped in an illusion deeply rooted in the collective mind of humanity. This illusion was not imposed by a tyrant nor programmed by a machine. It was voluntarily accepted, albeit unconsciously, as a silent agreement among millions of minds that assumed that the movement of celestial bodies, the aging of the body, or the duration of an event are equivalent to the very existence of time. The fundamental error lies in confusing change with the existence of a fixed framework called time. Time does not pass. The mind travels. Consciousness interprets. What we perceive as past or future are not real entities in themselves, but mental constructions sustained by the repetition of conditioned thoughts. Time is not a universal law. Time is an idea. From the perspective of the spiritual mind, the only real mind, time is nothing more than a symbolic organization of thought. Just as grammar structures language without being part of the message itself, time structures our perceptions without belonging to the essential truth of being. There is no past behind you, nor future ahead. there is only consciousness that remembers, consciousness that anticipates, and an eternal presence that observes both movements without participating in them. The attentive reader must now suspend all habits of thinking chronologically, because the chronological is nothing more than a reflection of the habit of thinking sequentially. Linear time is the mirror of a mind divided between memory and expectation. But when attention is unified, when consciousness is gathered in its central point, the now, all that was and all that will be collapses into the intensity of present being. This is what ancient scripture meant when it placed in the mouth of Christ consciousness the statement, "Before Abraham was, I am." Observe the use of the verb tense. It does not say, I was, or I will be. It says, I am. The I am does not belong to time. It precedes all calendars, all genealogies, and even the thought of birth and death. This I am is not a person. It is a presence. It is not an identity with a past. It is essence without history. When the Bible speaks of Jehovah as the one who is, who was, and who is to come, it is using figurative language to speak of the eternal state of presence, not of a literal sequence. One who can truthfully say, I am the eternal present, does not refer to the body or a name, but to pure consciousness that was never born and will never die. The conscious mind, also called the objective mind, is conditioned to experience time as a succession of events. This mind calculates, measures, compares, and narrates, but it cannot experience the eternal. Only the subconscious mind, or more properly deep consciousness, is capable of intuiting eternal being, because in it there is no sequence, only permeation. In the subconscious mind, the past does not exist as a file, nor the future as a possibility. Everything that lives there exists as active patterns, living energies, impressions waiting to be updated by present attention. The subconscious has no history, it has content. It does not know what happened 10 years ago, or measure the next month. It responds only to the dominant thought in the now. This is why every act of mental reprogramming begins with a temporal inversion, thinking from the end, acting as if it has already happened, living as if it were already fulfilled. Some people ask, but how can I change what already happened? The answer is simple and complete. The past does not exist in itself. It exists only as an image maintained in the mind. Change the image, change the memory, and therefore change your present. Memory is a construction. Nothing in the brain's structure exists in the form of an old film ready to be projected. What we call the past is a current recreation, reconstructed according to the emotional and mental state of the present. This understanding is liberating because it implies that you are not determined by your biography, but by your imagination. You are not the effect of what happened. You are the cause of what you decide to feel now. True freedom is not doing whatever you want, but remembering that you already are what you sought to be. The past can only live if you repeat it, and the future only forms if you postpone it. But the now is complete. There is a mental law that states, everything assumed as real in the present is imprinted in the subconscious as an executive order. This means that if you assume in faith that you are healthy, wealthy, at peace, or fulfilled, even if there is no external evidence, you are sowing the invisible cause of that condition, and sooner or later the manifestation must respond. But if you assume that you will be someday, you are confessing that today you are not, and the subconscious imprints that lack as your current reality. This is why it is vital to affirm, I am the eternal present. This statement eliminates all intervals of waiting, all postponements of your good, and becomes the most powerful decree you can pronounce in your mind. Modern physics has begun to glimpse what the ancients knew without instruments, that time is not absolute, that it depends on the observer, that it can be compressed, stretched, or even reversed under certain conditions. This is not magic, it is law. But spiritual law goes further, teaching that consciousness is not subject to time in any form and can draw from any point of eternity the experience it wishes to live. Correctly understood, prayer is not a plea to a possible future, but an acceptance of the good as already granted. True prayer does not ask, it declares. It does not wait, it acknowledges. It does not beg, it affirms. This is why the sages of all eras prayed in the present tense. Thank you, Father, for you have heard me. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, what already is at the invisible level manifests now in the visible. If you want to change your life, do not wait for time to change. Change your consciousness. Consciousness is the doer. Time is only the screen. You do not need to travel through time. You need to bring the memory of the desired state into the present. The mental technique consists of living now what your mind previously located in tomorrow. This is the inversion of sequence, not living from cause to effect, but from effect to cause. This confuses human logic, but the subconscious does not operate on logic, only on emotional acceptance. Therefore, act now as one who has already received, and the law will activate. Visualize clearly, feel intensely, speak as one who is already where you desire. Stop thinking, "When I have it," and start declaring, "I already have it." The only time in which you can operate mentally is the now. There is no prayer in yesterday, no miracle in the later. All manifestation occurs in the eternal instant of conscious recognition. Your mind does not need time, it needs decision. From today, replace all future phrases with the present. Instead of saying, "Someday I will be happy," say, "Now I am happy. Now I accept my good." And even if your senses contradict you, remember, the senses only inform you of the past. Your consciousness is the only broadcaster of the present. Faith consists in believing the invisible until the visible reorganizes. This is how power acts. Therefore, repeat each night with a serene face and absorbed mind, "I am the eternal present. What is already was. What I hope for, I already have. What I desire, I already am." And time that old dictator will dissolve like fog exposed to the sun of your awakened consciousness, because you are not trapped in time. You are the one who thinks time, and what you think, you can undo. Chapter 2. The Memory of the Future. The most persistent error in human consciousness is thinking that desire points toward a non-existent future, as if wanting something were a confession of lack that must be resolved later. This interpretation is not only ineffective, but profoundly distorting. It rests on a false assumption that what is desired does not yet exist, has not yet occurred, and has not yet been conceived in the order of being. But those who have understood the mental law, who have minimally explored the processes of the subconscious, and who have tested the power of affirmative prayer, know that every legitimate desire is, in reality, a memory, not of chronological past, but of a timeless plane of being in which that experience has already been lived, already assumed, already fulfilled. Desire is not an announcement of what is lacking. It is a signal from the soul, reminding you of what already belongs to you in eternity. What you now long for with a pure heart, you have already been in a higher dimension. Every authentic desire contains within it the seed of its own fulfillment, not as a future possibility, but as a pending update at the conscious level. Desire does not originate in the ego or in fanciful imagination. True desire emerges from the deepest core of being, where there is no division between time and eternity. There is no before or after there. Only states of the soul, vibratory patterns, pure forms seeking expression. And when a higher state begins to press toward the surface of your mind, you experience it as a longing. You call it desire, but in reality, it is a memory. It is an echo of an expanded version of yourself that has already lived what you have yet to allow yourself to live. It is your spiritual self speaking to your temporal self. When you understand this, your relationship with desire changes completely. You stop chasing and begin recognizing. You stop asking and begin accepting. You do not project outward, you align inward. This inverts the logic of the world. Instead of acting as one who hopes to receive, you act as one who has already received. This is the root of all effective prayer, not declaring a lack, but affirming fulfillment. The subconscious does not respond to what you want to have. It responds to what it assumes to be. You do not attract what you desire. You manifest what you believe you have remembered as true. Many clients who came to me at different moments in their lives, on the brink of crisis or illness, shared a revealing detail that appeared just before their transformation, a vision. It was not always a dream or a precise image. Sometimes it was a vivid sensation, an inexplicable certainty, a scene seen in meditation or in a state of mental stillness in which they already saw themselves healed, fulfilled, and free. A woman who battled crippling arthritis for 5 years began practicing each night a technique I taught her. Visualizing herself walking barefoot along the beach, her legs agile, feeling the sand between her toes. For 3 weeks she noticed no change in her body, but at the end of the 4th week, she rose from her bed as if chains had been broken. When I asked what she felt during the practice, she replied, "It wasn't as if I imagined it. It was as if I remembered it. I knew it had already happened. I was just living it again." This is the key. Every time a client has achieved real transformation, it has coincided with this principle. They were not constructing the future. They were remembering a more real version of themselves. One of them, a ruined businessman, practiced for weeks, visualizing himself signing contracts, receiving calls of success, celebrating agreements with complete confidence. When events began to align, he told me, it was like returning to a life I already knew. It wasn't new, it was mine from before. This is how the mental law is verified. Consciousness does not create the future. It reactivates it. To understand this with a simple image, consider the seed of a tree. It does not contain only matter. It contains a design, an invisible pattern that, given the right environment, will unfold in time and form. Within the seed is everything: the shape of the branches, the thickness of the trunk, the total height, the flowering, even the timing of the first fruit. None of this is visible, but all is encoded. So it is with your desire. It is not an uncertain proposal, but an internal code, a hidden memory awaiting your conscious affirmation. If you water it with the proper emotion and repeated affirmation, it will inevitably bloom. But if you observe it with doubt, compare it with your circumstances, or judge it as distant or unlikely, you are withholding the spiritual water it needs: certainty. Here precision is required. Not everything the mind desires is a memory of the soul. There are desires driven by fear, envy, or social comparison. These desires are products of the ego, not of the self, and should not be nourished. True desire, on the other hand, produces no anxiety or lack. It produces anticipatory peace, the sensation of returning home. When an authentic desire appears, you know it. It is not an urgent impulse. It is a serene truth. Therefore, do not struggle to fulfill it. Mentally place yourself inside it as one enters a room that is already prepared. This is why, instead of saying, "I desire this," it is better to affirm, "I remember having been this." Change your verb, change your vibration. The subconscious does not understand the future, only the present lived. And everything you declare as fact, even in silence and without witnesses, will be taken as law by your inner mind. The affirmation, "I remember my life fulfilled," holds more power than 1,000 visualizations without emotion, because what is remembered is assumed real, while what is imagined remains in the category of the possible. Now understand why many people become frustrated with their goals. They always place them outside themselves. They say, "I want to achieve this someday." But that someday is a hidden denial of the now. And what you deny in the present, the subconscious indefinitely postpones. Do not act as one working toward a result. Act as one confirming a memory. Dress as one who already lives the desired state. Speak as one who has already passed through that experience. Bless your future as if it were your past. This is how you reprogram your present. Now, dear reader, pause for a few minutes, close your eyes. Visualize your greatest longing, but do not place it before you as a distant horizon. Feel it as already fulfilled. Return to it as one returns home. Whisper to yourself, "This is not new to me. I have already lived this joy, this health, this abundance. It was only asleep in me, and now I recognize it." You do not need to repeat it 1,000 times. It is enough to believe it once with total sincerity. The law will do the rest. At this point, you begin to understand that the future is not something you fabricate. It is something you remember. The timeline is not constructed forward. It is revealed from within. And the more you assume the memory as your starting point, the faster external conditions will adjust to that memory. This is the inversion. Not living from history to desire, but from desire to history. Legitimate desire is a key, but it does not open external doors. It opens the chest where your treasure already exists. And if you dare to live as one who has found it, then you will find it. Because the law never fails. It has never failed. It cannot fail. What you assume in faith, the entire universe confirms. And what you remember with love is already happening. even if your eyes have not yet seen it. The seed has already germinated, the tree already exists. It only waits for you to recognize it. Chapter 3. The Technique of Mental Inversion. Anyone who has experienced suffering knows that the mind tends to narrate the events of life in chronological order. First this happened, then the consequence came, and now I am here carrying the effects of that previous cause. This narrative seems logical, even natural, but in reality it is a mechanical habit, not a law. It is a custom entrenched in the objective mind that has confused sequence with truth. The mind is not bound to the chain of cause and effect. It is conditioned to believe in it, which is very different. And this conditioning can be deactivated, inverted, corrected. The higher mental law allows not only for breaking the apparent sequence, but also for reversing it, placing the desired effect at the beginning and allowing the cause to reorganize itself according to that image. This principle, which may seem paradoxical to natural reason, is the foundation of the technique of mental inversion. It is based on the premise that the subconscious does not need an external cause to manifest an effect. The subconscious only needs an internal image infused with emotional certainty. When this image is sustained with conviction, the deep mind organizes visible conditions so that the external world confirms the submerged state. This is why we affirm, you are not the effect of your past, but the cause of your present. And if you change the image you are holding as real, you will immediately change the network of invisible causes, sustaining your experience. Mental inversion, therefore, consists of selecting the result you desire, living it in your mind as if it has already been fulfilled, and from that certainty projecting backward the sequence of necessary events. You do not wait for reality to confirm it. You confirm reality before seeing it. This is the true use of faith, not as a passive longing, but as an active acceptance of an invisible state. Faith is not looking at the sky or repeating meaningless formulas. Faith is assuming that it already is. This assumption, imprinted in the subconscious matrix, acts as an order that reorganizes the entire causal network of your life. Those who have not practiced this technique submit to the laws of human logic. First the effort, then the result. First the treatment, then the healing. First the learning, then the success. But those who apply mental inversion establish a new order. First the fulfilled image, then the steps that confirm that fulfillment. This is not an artificial inversion. It is a restoration of the true sequence of the spiritual mind, which always begins from wholeness and unfolds in time. Divine thought does not advance from the small to the large. It manifests fully from the start. One of the most revealing cases I attended was that of a 48-year-old man diagnosed with macular degeneration. Doctors warned him that within months he would lose his vision irreversibly. He came to me resigned. Convinced that science had done all it could, I told him firmly, "Medical science works on effects, but your mind works on causes." I asked him to suspend all expectations regarding time, to stop waiting for gradual improvement, and I taught him the technique of mental inversion. Each night, before sleep, he was to visualize himself reading his favorite newspaper, recognizing the headlines, commenting on the news, but he had to do it with the sensation of having lived it many times, like someone repeating a familiar routine. He was not to imagine a miracle, but to remember a reality. For 20 minutes daily, his only task was this, to feel that he had already regained his vision. Weeks later, he returned to see me. With tears that needed no explanation, he showed me the book he was reading without glasses. He said, "I don't know how to explain it. It was as if my body had to catch up with something my mind already knew." His vision had returned completely. How did it happen? According to the mental law, the image imprinted in the subconscious overcame the body's inertia. The effect was assumed before the physical cause, that is, inversion. The secret of this technique lies in the nightly formula. "Thank you, Father, because this has already been fulfilled." This statement is not a symbolic prayer. It is an operational declaration. By saying thank you, you assume that the good has already been received. By saying Father, you acknowledge that the creative intelligence acts from within. By saying already fulfilled, you close the door to time. This phrase must be repeated with full attention just before sleep, when the conscious mind relinquishes its vigilance and the subconscious is directly exposed to the impression. This is the most powerful window for planting an image without resistance. No matter what circumstances say, no matter if the body is still ill, the bank account empty, or the relationship still broken. The law does not respond to what you see, but to what you assume. And if your assumption is firm, all visible conditions will yield. Remember the tree we mentioned before. In this technique, you do not merely plant the seed, you visualize the mature fruit from the beginning. And the subconscious, which is fertile soil, organizes time so that the fruit appears, even if current conditions seem barren. You do not need to know how. You only need to know that it already is. This technique requires no physical effort, theological preparation, or mystical initiation. It only requires mental discipline. Each night, without exception, choose the final scene of your fulfilled desire, live it as if reliving a memory, and affirm with gratitude that it has already been realized. This is not about convincing God. God does not need convincing. It is about convincing your own nervous system, your own consciousness, that this state has already been achieved. The subconscious accepts what you repeat with emotion, and if you repeat a scene of fulfillment day after day with love and certainty, that scene will be projected outward as experience. Some ask, what if I don't fully believe it? What if at first it feels like a fantasy? To them, I say, repeat it anyway. The mind does not distinguish between a real experience and an experience lived with emotional intensity. Repetition creates conviction, and conviction generates evidence. You do not need to fully believe from day one, but you must practice faithfully. The mind bends to consistency. The right feeling will emerge from habit. Remember this, the subconscious does not operate with logic or time. It operates with images and emotions. That is why the technique of mental inversion does not need arguments, only clear images and coherent emotions. Do not ask how it will happen. Ask if you are willing to live today as if it has already occurred. If you can assume the result without anxiety, doubt, or obsessive vigilance, then the process has begun. The clear instruction is this. Each night before sleep, enter the desired state. Visualize it with all your senses. Feel that it has already happened. Do not push it forward. Bring it to yourself. And at the end, say internally, "Thank you, Father, because this has already been fulfilled." Then sleep in peace. Do not interrupt the process with questions, nor analyze it upon waking. Let it act. Your faith is measured not by the emotion of the moment, but by your ability to allow without anxiety. The technique of mental inversion is not a magical act. It is a higher spiritual discipline. It requires maturity, inner silence, and above all, decision. Deciding to live from the effect, not the cause. Deciding to remember the end, not analyze the means. Deciding to act as one who has already received, even if the external world has not yet confirmed it. That is true faith. And that faith, once established, reverses the entire causal machinery of the universe to obey the mental image you have sealed in the invisible. This is the law, and the law does not fail. Chapter 4. The Eternal Now as a Healing Foundation. Any attempt to heal from the past is useless. Any attempt to heal from the future is illusory. The only real possibility of healing occurs at the one point where life truly exists, the present. Not the present as a fraction of a second between before and after, but the present as active eternity, as the indivisible field where what is already exists, and where any condition, no matter how chronic it seems, can be nullified if it is recognized as not belonging to the true now. This principle is absolute. Nothing falls ill outside of time, and nothing heals outside of the now. Every ailment persists because it is granted psychological continuity, and every malady dissolves when the attention sustaining it is withdrawn. That is why I say with full inner authority, healing is not a slow process in time, it is a profound decision in the now. The body, that prodigious obedient instrument, has no will of its own. It responds to the mental pattern inhabiting it. If that pattern carries memories of trauma, judgment, guilt, or fear, the body manifests that distortion as tension, disease, inflammation, or deterioration. But the body can also be reprogrammed by a single image sustained with faith in the now. Disease is a sustained sequence. Healing is a disruption of that sequence. Just as a thermometer kept under the arm maintains the idea of fever, The memory of injury keeps the wound alive, but if you remove the thermometer, if you suspend attention to the symptom, the body no longer finds reason to sustain the alarm. The fever dissipates. The symptom yields because it no longer has justification. This principle was confirmed again and again in my experience with people who seemed to have no medical hope. The most striking case was a 73-year-old woman stooped by osteoarthritis, whose spine had lost nearly all mobility. She had been treated for years with painkillers and palliative exercises. When she came to me, she brought no faith in any method, only the weariness of repetition. I said, "We will not speak of your medical history. We are going to enter your eternal present." I asked her to close her eyes for 10 minutes each day and imagine her body dancing, not walking but dancing with grace, lightness and freedom, like a young woman in spring. She laughed. She said it was ridiculous but agreed to try. After 2 weeks of daily practice, her back began to loosen. By the 3rd week, her arms lifted without pain. By the 4th week, she danced with her granddaughter at a family gathering. What happened? The image sustained in the now dissolved the story sustained in time. That is what occurred. The most common mistake of those seeking healing is wanting to correct the causes. They search in childhood, in traumas, in ancestors, in genes, but in doing so, they reinforce the power of the past, dig it up, relive it, justify it, and forget that the subconscious does not distinguish between remembering and experiencing. If you remember a damage with intensity, you are reliving it. You are keeping it active. No matter when it occurred, you are planting it again. That is why I state without ambiguity, the past has no power except that which you give it now, and the present does not need explanations to heal. It only needs acceptance. Healing occurs when you fully immerse yourself in an image of wholeness and stop negotiating with the past. You owe it nothing. You do not need to forgive anyone, justify anything, or understand the cause. You only need to see with crystal clarity the desired state, as if it were your current state. This is what a trained inner physician does. They do not search through files. They see the body as already perfect. And that gaze is therapeutic because it transmits to the energetic field the vibration of the result. One of the most precise examples I witnessed was with a musician who had lost sensitivity in his fingers due to progressive neuropathy. His greatest suffering was not physical, but emotional. He felt he could no longer play, that his gift had died. I asked him to visualize each night his hands playing the piano, not as hope, but as reality. I taught him to repeat, "Thank you, Father, because this has already been fulfilled," just before sleep. The first week he only imagined. The second week he felt a slight tingling. The third week his fingers responded. By the fourth week he played his first full scale. There was no external intervention, only an internal decision, to live from the now, not from the year. His healing was immediate in consciousness and progressive in the body. This technique is not new. It is the foundation of every authentic miracle. Jesus of Nazareth did not ask for details, did not request medical histories. He simply said, "Rise and walk." It was not a suggestion. It was a decree that cancelled the past. And the mind of the sick person, exposed to that vibratory authority, accepted the new image and reorganized itself. This principle remains valid, and you do not need another to tell you. You can assume it yourself. You can look at your body and say, "I do not believe in your history. I believe in your now, and in this now, you are whole." If you wish to practice this technique, here is the exact method. Each day, dedicate 10 minutes to closing your eyes and visualizing your body in its perfect state. Do not look at the symptom. Do not analyze the ailment. Visualize the final effect, the desired result, with the greatest clarity possible. If it is mobility, imagine movement. If it is vision, imagine reading. If it is peace, imagine slow breathing and a relaxed face. Do not place the desire in the future. Live the image as if it has already been fulfilled. And at the end, say quietly, "Thank you, Father, because this has already been fulfilled." Then release it. Do not think about it further. Do it each night without expectation, without judgment, just as one returns to a beautiful memory, because it is a memory of the eternal now, where everything is fulfilled. Always remember that the subconscious does not need logic. It only needs clear instruction. If you instruct your mind with repeated images of health imbued with present emotion, the body has no choice. It must obey. Just as a building follows the architect's plans, the body follows the mental blueprints you provide. If you update them, it reconstructs itself. And do not fear if you do not see results at first. Do not seek them. Do not interrupt the process with anxiety. Healing is not an act of forced will. It is the fruit of silent faith. You repeat your image, you inhabit your now, and let the law do the rest. Because the law does not need time. The law needs alignment. And when you and the now are on the same frequency, everything else collapses. Diagnosis, history, prognosis, limitation. Only the being remains, only what is real. To heal is to remember who you are without the story. To heal is to inhabit the instant where lack does not exist. To heal is to assume that your body obeys your mind obeys your spirit, and your spirit is not sick. It never was. It only waits to be recognized here now. Not tomorrow, not after understanding everything, but now, because only the now heals, and that now is already within you. Chapter 5. The Timeline as Collective Hypnosis. Every human being is born into a narrative. Geography, language, or culture makes no difference. We are born into a pre-written sequence. We are instructed in the logic of first this, then that, and we learn, without questioning it, that our existence must be organized like a line, like a path that runs from a point of origin to a point of arrival. This line is called personal history, and on it are placed labels, events, traumas, achievements, and an emotional load that over time becomes destiny. Most people live under this invisible line as if it were a natural law. They believe that what they have been determines who they are, and who they are restricts what they can become. But this is not true. This is hypnosis, a collective suggestion accepted out of inertia, not evidence. And like all hypnosis, it can be dissolved by awakening consciousness. The so-called timeline is not a cosmic phenomenon. It is a mental construct sustained by millions of minds in shared agreement. It is a shared grammar that organizes experience in sequence, as if that were necessary to understand life. But life is not linear. Consciousness is not linear. Spirit does not move from yesterday to tomorrow. Only the conditioned mind does. Therefore, when a person awakens from the temporal trance, there is no need to erase their past. They simply stop feeding it. There is no need to change their story. They simply recognize it as a useful fiction that is no longer necessary. What we call personal history is nothing more than an arbitrary selection of memories encoded in the subconscious, organized to give meaning to an identity that no longer holds. The sages of the East knew this long before Western psychology had vocabulary to explain it. In the Upanishads, there is a striking statement that summarizes this revelation. You were not born. You entered a dream. This phrase is not a metaphor. It is an ontological statement. It does not refer to the body, but to consciousness. What you call your life, with its crucial moments, ages, losses, and rewards, is only a fraction of who you truly are. It is a mental theater sustained by your attention, and like any theater, it can be dismantled when it is no longer necessary. History is not your essence, it is scenery. One of the most transformative cases I encountered was a listener to my radio lectures, a 55-year-old man who had lived for decades under the label of failure. From a childhood marked by abandonment to an adulthood full of wrong decisions and broken relationships, he kept repeating, "Everything I start, I destroy." When he wrote to me, all he wanted was not to repeat the same pattern again. I didn't want success, I wanted freedom. I responded with a simple but radical instruction. For 21 days, he was to repeat morning and evening the phrase, "I have no history, only fulfilled destiny." It was not about denying the facts, but about ceasing to identify with them. I asked him to imagine his life during those minutes each day as a blank canvas, not as a predetermined script. By the second week, he began to experience dissonance. He no longer felt identified with his usual story. It seemed foreign, as if he were remembering someone else's life. By the third week, he felt the impulse to start a business he had discarded 20 years earlier. Within 6 months, that business became his new source of income, his new mental environment, his new identity. When we met in person, he said with unwavering peace, "I didn't change my life. I changed the channel. That is the truth. You do not need to transform your story. You only need to stop tuning into it. The power of this technique lies in understanding that the subconscious does not store facts, but interpretations. It does not keep the event. It keeps the emotional judgment you made about it. If you change the judgment, the burden changes. And if the burden changes, the attraction changes. The subconscious is not a passive memory archive. It is a projector that projects outward the images you continue to believe are true. That is why I repeat, history only lives if you reactivate it. If you do not repeat it, it dissolves. The mind cannot sustain what is not fed. Some may say, but isn't it irresponsible to ignore what we have lived through? To which I respond, it is not about ignoring. It is about releasing. Recognizing that you are more than your story. Recognizing that you are the point of consciousness that chose that story, and that you can choose another. You are not bound by your mistakes. You are not marked by your past. You can stand today with absolute spiritual sobriety and declare, "My story is over. Now my destiny begins." And that declaration, sustained with faith, is more powerful than any therapy based on the repetition of trauma, because there is no freedom in reliving the wound. Freedom lies in choosing a new image. In technical terms, this practice is called conscious reframing, but in spiritual terms, it is a rebirth. You decide to be born today, not symbolically, but mentally, and that means cutting the timeline as an organizer of identity. You are no longer the wounded child, the impulsive youth, the frustrated adult. You are not the victim, nor the aggressor. You are not the role, nor the judgment. You are the being, and the being has no age, no archive, no statistics. The being is pure presence, and its only language is the now. To achieve this rupture, I propose a precise practice for the next 21 days. Morning upon waking and evening before sleeping, repeat aloud, not as a mantra, but as a decree, the phrase, "I have no history, only fulfilled destiny." While doing so, imagine your entire previous life dissolving like ink in water. Imagine only the current moment remaining, full, conscious, without reference. If memories arise, do not repress them. Just observe them as images from someone else's movie. They are not you. They are old, scriptless sequences. Reaffirm, that is not me. That was a role. I am the one who chooses the role now. This practice has a cumulative effect. At first, your mind will resist. It will seek to justify, remember, cling, but remain firm. Do not argue, just repeat. The subconscious does not understand arguments, but it understands repetition. And what you repeat with conviction becomes your new root. The timeline is only a branch. You are the root, and the root can grow in a different direction. I have known men and women who changed their entire existence in a month, not because they won the lottery or inherited wealth, but because they freed themselves from their story. They stopped being the abandoned one, the betrayed one, the one who never achieved anything, and they began to be the one who decided to awaken, the one who chose a new image, the one who declared the end of their story and the beginning of their destiny. These people are no different from you. They only decided not to remain hypnotized by an external sequence. You can do the same because the timeline is a suggestion, and you have the power to desuggest yourself, not through struggle but through consciousness, not through analysis but through decision, not through endless therapy, but through a repeated affirmation with faith. That affirmation can be the key that opens a new life, and if you say it with all your being, the universe will align to confirm what you decreed. Because the law does not recognize your story, it recognizes your vibration. And if your vibration says, "I already am," then everything else must adjust. The story ends where you decide, and destiny begins the moment you remember who you are. Not the name, not the character, but the being. The one with no past, the one who needs no future, the one who simply is. Now, here, eternal, Chapter 6, the past can lose its power. The idea of a fixed, solid, unalterable past is a cultural construct that has enslaved millions of minds for centuries. We have been taught that the past is a faithful record of what was, an objective sequence of events that leaves indelible marks. This assumption is one of the most pernicious illusions that prevents mental transformation. Because if the past were truly objective, then no one could free themselves from it. We would be prisoners of an irreversible narrative. But this is not the case. The past, as you experience it, is not what happened, it is what you interpreted. It is not a file, it is a projection. It is not a stone, it is a mental shadow. And like any shadow, it disappears when the light of present consciousness shines upon it. Every time you relive a memory, you are not accessing a passive record. You are actively recreating a coded emotional experience. Modern neurological science confirms what spiritual wisdom has said for millennia. There is no exact memory of the past. There are only subjective reconstructions, modifiable each time they are recalled. But beyond what science says, the essential point is this. You can cancel a memory when you decide you no longer need its interpretation. The memory as an image may remain, but its emotional power disappears when you withdraw your judgment. That is true liberation, not erasing the scene but dissolving its impact. The subconscious does not store rights, it stores emotional meaning. If you interpreted an event as painful, unjust, or humiliating, that judgment remained as an active vibration, and that vibration constantly projects into your present, attracting similar events. This is called emotional repetition. But if you decide to reframe that event, you can deactivate its frequency. You do not need to understand every detail or relive the trauma. You only need to illuminate it from the now. And this illumination is achieved through a clear, direct, unambiguous mental affirmation. I cancel this memory in the light of the now. This phrase is not symbolic. It is a direct command to the subconscious. The light of the now represents pure consciousness, without judgment, without interpretation. When you affirm that a memory has been cancelled in the light of the now, you are removing the power it held over your identity. You are telling your mind, this no longer defines me, this no longer has charge, this is no longer part of who I am. You are not denying its existence, you are denying its control, and that is the key to true healing, stopping the repetition of what no longer serves. One of the most astonishing cases I encountered was that of a 39-year-old woman who carried a deep resentment toward her father since childhood. For decades, she suffered from failed relationships, emotional self-sabotage, and chronic sadness she could not rationally explain. When she came to my consultation, she had a diagnosis of treatment-resistant depression. She was not looking for analysis, she sought relief. I asked her not to tell me her story, but to close her eyes and imagine her father before her. Not the real father, but the mental image she carried. Then I asked her to say mentally, I cancel this memory in the light of the now, repeating it while visualizing the figure dissolving into a luminous mist. No more than 5 minutes. When she opened her eyes, she said nothing, she just breathed deeply. I instructed her to repeat the exercise each night for a week. She did not return. 3 months later, she wrote me a letter saying her sadness had disappeared, her relationship with her current partner had transformed, and for the first time in her life, she felt a peace independent of anyone else. She had forgiven without words, without confrontation, without explanations. She had simply deactivated the memory by withdrawing her identification with it. This is what a single, well-directed session can achieve, breaking the cycle of repetition by cutting the energetic link to the original interpretation. Mental forgiveness is not a moral act. It is not an external absolution. It is internal hygiene. You do not forgive out of kindness. You forgive out of lucidity, because you know that as long as you maintain the active judgment, you maintain the cause of suffering. And if you keep it active, you will continue to relive its effects. The mind is obedient, not reasonable. If you command it to feel pain over an event from 20 years ago, it will obey. But if you tell it, this memory has been cancelled, and you say it firmly, the energetic charge begins to dissipate. This technique requires discipline. It is not enough to say it once and expect a miracle. The mind has been trained for years to repeat certain judgments. You must deprogram it with equal tenacity. Every time you feel the emotion of the old memory, repeat clearly, I cancel this memory in the light of the now. Do not argue with the emotion. Do not analyze it. Just repeat. Repetition is the chisel that carves the new mental structure. And once the structure is firm, the emotional content reorganizes. Many ask, what if the memory returns? I respond, the memory may return, but it will no longer find you in the same place. You will no longer react the same way. That is the sign that the deactivation is working. Do not fear its return. Simply receive it neutrally and repeat the cancellation. In a short time, you will see that the scene loses its force, becomes vague, harmless, powerless. That is victory, not its disappearance, but that it no longer affects you. What does not affect you cannot act. Remember this clearly, you are not obligated to keep living from your memories. You can consciously choose which to hold and which to release. You can declare, at this very moment, nothing I experience limits me. Nothing that happened diminishes my worth. I am now, and from this now, all the past dissolves. This declaration, if spoken from the center of your consciousness, is more powerful than any prolonged therapeutic technique because it establishes the essential truth. You are not the effect of your biography. You are the cause of your present. The past is not a prison. It is an image you can redraw. It is an interpretation you can rewrite. It is a burden you can release. The key lies in your word, and your word is law for your mind. If you decide to say, "This no longer has power over me," the subconscious will accept it as instruction, and your body, emotions, and relationships will begin to reflect this new reality. I invite you to practice this formula starting today. Whenever a painful memory arises, pause for a moment, breathe, and declare, "I cancel this memory in the light of the now. I am free." Do it with presence, do it with decision, do it until the old emotion can no longer sustain itself. You will then see the story lose its chains, the wounds stop bleeding, and you can walk without the past. Because the past only lives if you drag it, and you are not here to drag, it is here to release, and that release begins now. Chapter 7. The Expanded Consciousness Experience as a Vehicle for Temporal Inversion. In everyday conversations, faith is often spoken of as if it were synonymous with hope, as if having faith meant sitting and waiting with a smile for what is desired to occur at some uncertain point in the future. This confusion has weakened the creative power of millions of minds, diluted the spiritual capacity to act on the invisible, and caused faith to be understood as a passive act, when in reality it is the most powerful active mechanism of consciousness. Hope is waiting. Waiting implies distance. Waiting keeps the desired outcome away. Faith, on the other hand, is present mental possession. It is invisible certainty. It is the immediate acceptance of a reality not yet manifested, as if it already were. This is the law. You do not have faith in what might happen. You have faith in what already is. And this total, direct, irrevocable assumption is what moves the invisible into the visible. Faith does not push, beg, or plead. Faith takes possession because it knows that time is merely a backdrop, not an obstacle. Every temporal inversion begins with an internal affirmation. The affirmation is not a magic phrase. It is a way of settling into a state of consciousness. And that state, when assumed as real, becomes an alternative reality. The deep mind, which does not distinguish between what you see and what you assume as true, accepts as an order what you declare as done. And if you declare with full conviction, "This is already mine in consciousness," your subconscious takes it as truth. From that moment, invisible forces begin to reorganize your external experience. To clarify this, I often use a simple but precise image: the post-dated check. Imagine a loved one gives you a check for a large sum, but the cashing date is 30 days away. You do not worry, you do not doubt, you do not cry or repeat affirmations. You simply know that the money is yours, even though it is not yet in your account. Why? Because you trust the source, because you recognize the validity of the document, because your mind has already accepted the reality of fulfillment. That acceptance is faith. You do not need the money right now to feel ownership. You already act as if you have it. This is how spiritual law works. Faith collects now. But there is a crucial difference between a post-dated check and true faith. Faith does not have to wait. In the spiritual world, there is no future date. There is no legal delay. If you can accept that what is desired is already fulfilled in consciousness, then time collapses. The effect accelerates. The process inverts. The cause is no longer behind. It is ahead. And the present begins to reorganize according to the assumed image. One of the most effective exercises I teach to activate this inversion is the following affirmation, to be pronounced with full emotional attention in a state of deep relaxation. This is already mine in consciousness. You must say it without tension, without anxiety, without urgency. You must inhabit that phrase as one inhabits a familiar house. And while repeating it, you must visualize the desired state as if it already surrounds you. Not as a distant ideal, but as a current atmosphere. This is how faith begins to operate, not as a path, but as an arrival. I recall the case of a man who had lost his job and was about to lose his home. His anxiety was so intense that no visualization seemed to work. I then taught him this single phrase and asked him to repeat it whenever fear returned. At first he did it mechanically, but after a few days he began to say it with a different energy. He no longer sought the outcome. He felt the outcome. And within 2 weeks, not only had he found a new job, but he was also hired by a company he had admired for years. It was not chance. It was not coincidence. It was the natural fulfillment of a faith assumed as present certainty. It is not about convincing the universe. It is not about forcing an external energy. The universe is already complete. Creation is already finished. What you are doing is tuning into a mental frequency, and that tuning depends on your internal word. When you speak with spiritual authority, not with loud voice but with silent conviction, your subconscious obeys because it was designed for that. It has no power of decision. It only executes. If you say, "This is already mine," it will take it as done. But if you say, "I hope it happens someday," it will also take it as done. But someday will be indefinitely postponed. This is why many prayers fail. They are formulated from lack, from doubt, from the idea that it is not yet. And the subconscious, which does not discern the logic of the sentence, simply reproduces the vibration it receives. If you vibrate in "I don't have," you will continue not to have. If you vibrate in "I already have," external conditions will begin to confirm that internal possession. This is the law. Now someone may ask, what if my mind does not fully believe it? What if I feel like I am lying? My response? Your superficial mind will always doubt at first. It has been trained to believe only what it sees, but you are not working with the superficial mind. You are working with the creative repository, the subconscious, the secret chamber where everything you take as true is stored. And this repository does not evaluate. It only records. If you repeat an idea enough with feeling, that idea becomes root, and what has root bears fruit. Thus, the practice consists of declaring each day, internally or externally, with the highest degree of attention possible. This is already mine in consciousness. You can apply it to any area: health, prosperity, relationships, mental peace. What matters is not the external situation. What matters is the assumed state. If you assume your healing, your body will begin to cooperate. If you assume your abundance, opportunities will begin to reveal themselves. If you assume your new identity, the external world will begin to treat you as that identity. This is not suggestion, it is alignment. You are not pretending, you are choosing. You are using the highest faculty you have, the capacity to assume a higher reality. And that assumption, sustained with faith, changes the structure of your experience, not because you force it, but because you believe it. Not because you repeat mechanically, but because you live it emotionally. Remember, the subconscious does not respond to empty words. It responds to felt images. And the most powerful image is that of the fulfilled result. If you can maintain that image above appearances, your faith becomes cause. Do not wait for the world to confirm it. Confirm to the world that it already is. This is the essence of temporal inversion, and faith is its vehicle. Not the vehicle of hope, but the vehicle of decree. Therefore, I invite you today to choose an image, assume it as real, and say without doubt, without pause, without explanation, "This is already mine in consciousness." Do not ask how it will happen. Do not analyze it. Just feel it and let it act. Because what you feel as true in your inner world will manifest precisely in your external world, effortlessly, because the law has already been activated and faith has already cashed the check, here now in the eternal present. Chapter 8. Rewriting your future with words of power. Every human experience is born in language. There is no thought without words, no emotion that is not imbued with a verbal form. What you call your destiny is nothing more than the unconscious extension of phrases you have repeated over time. Phrases about yourself, about the world, about what is possible and impossible. Every word you have spoken with emotional intensity has left a trace in the deep substrate of your mind, and that trace has become a path, a pattern, a fulfilled prophecy. This principle, although known in its popular forms, such as in religious proverbs or self-suggestion formulas, has been stripped of its spiritual depth because most people use words as descriptive labels, not as creative instruments. They speak about what happens, but do not understand that in speaking it, they reinforce it. They describe their health, their finances, their relationships, unaware that each time they name their current state, they solidify it even more. They ignore that every emotionally charged word is a creative command to the subconscious, and therefore every word not only informs, it forms. The higher mental law establishes that the verb is the most direct transmission channel between the conscious mind and the subconscious repository. And this transmission becomes active, not passive, when accompanied by sustained emotion. It is not enough to repeat phrases as if reading a pamphlet. Words must be breathed, felt, sustained as internal truths. Only then do they penetrate the fertile ground of the subconscious, and new realities begin to germinate. That is why I affirm, your destiny can be rewritten through words of power, spoken with awareness and emotion in the present. And these words should not be chosen at random. They must be formulated with precision, directed to the area you wish to transform, and assumed as absolute declarations. The most effective technique I teach to achieve this is the I am from the future technique, speaking to your present self. This technique is based on the principle that the future already exists as a potential state, and you can take possession of it by speaking to yourself from that point of fulfillment. The practice is simple but powerful. It consists of imagining yourself as having already reached the desired state, whether full health, stable prosperity, or harmony in your relationships, and from that image speaking aloud or mentally to your present self, not in terms of desire but of fulfillment. You do not say, I wish to be well, but I am already well, confirming it from your experience. This way of speaking is not fantasy, it is vibrational transfer. You are bringing the energy of the result into your conscious now. You are establishing a new dominant frequency in your mental field. For this technique to work effectively, you need to work with specific affirmations, not generic ones. Generic affirmations tend to dilute because they are not connected to a clear image. In contrast, affirmations directed at a concrete area create immediate resonance. Below are examples of specific affirmations adapted to 3 major areas of life. For physical and emotional health, every cell of my body vibrates with perfect energy. I am the living expression of inner harmony. My body cooperates with my mind in a continuous process of regeneration. From my healthy future, I tell you, you are already completely free. You are already well. For prosperity and financial flow, money flows to me in constant, unstoppable streams. I am a source of value, and all that is necessary comes to me effortlessly. My wealth is the natural manifestation of my abundant consciousness. From my prosperous future, I tell you, everything has already been provided. You have already received it. For harmonious relationships and healthy bonds, I am a presence that radiates understanding, affection, and truth. Every encounter is an opportunity to express my inner fullness. I attract relationships based on conscious love. From my peaceful future, I tell you, you are already surrounded by those who elevate you. These affirmations should be repeated daily, preferably during moments of greatest subconscious receptivity, just before sleep and upon waking, when the mind has not yet activated its judgment. You can also write them slowly by hand, letting each word imprint in your consciousness like a living seed. What matters is not quantity, but the emotional quality with which you speak them. A single affirmation, spoken with full feeling, can alter years of limiting programming. You do not need to understand all the mechanisms. You only need to practice faithfully, because spiritual language does not respond to analysis. It responds to vibration. If you hold an affirmation as true, even if you do not yet see it confirmed, the universe begins to reorganize events, people, and circumstances to materialize that assumed state. And if you ever feel that you are repeating without conviction, remember this. Conviction does not precede repetition. It is born from it. No one believes in something before repeating it, but by repeating it, they incorporate it. And by incorporating it, they manifest it. Your mind is malleable. Your destiny is editable. Your word is the pen with which you rewrite your life. Do not wait for external conditions to change. Do not wait for someone to confirm it. Begin today to speak as one who has already arrived. Begin to live from your future self. Speak to your present self as you would to a friend who has yet to remember who they are, with firmness, tenderness, and authority. Because that future self is not far away. It is available right now in the dimension of consciousness. And if you align with it through words of power, you will no longer be seeking change, you will be being the change. This is the law. The word is the first form of manifestation. Before the act comes the image, and before the image comes the verb. If you purify your verb, you purify your world. If you direct your word, you direct your life. If you rewrite your future with emotionally charged affirmations, the future will cease to be a mere extension of the past and will become a new, certainly available field. So write your destiny with your voice. Declare with spiritual authority, "This is already mine in consciousness. I am the fulfilled version of myself, and from this state I speak to you, guide you, and liberate you." And in doing so, you will see the external world begin to treat you as one who has already received everything, because in truth, that is exactly what you have. Chapter 9, the elimination of negative time. All human suffering, when examined under the lens of awakened consciousness, reveals itself as a distortion of time. No one suffers from what is happening exactly now. Suffering, whether fear, anxiety, guilt, or sadness, is almost always the result of a perception displaced in time, a scene from the past that is relived as present, or a possible future anticipated as imminent. Thus, pain does not reside in the events themselves, but in when they are placed. You do not suffer from what happened, but because you continue to place it in your present. You do not suffer from what might come, but because you already live it, as if it is happening. That is why I affirm, the greatest spiritual error is the misuse of time. Fear is always a projection into the future. We fear what has not happened, what could happen, what we imagine will come. But when the mind visualizes it with intensity, it feels real, and the body responds with tension, flight, or alarm. In this way, a future illusion becomes a present biological fact. The same applies to anxiety. It is an expectation accelerated to the point that it drags consciousness out of its center. The individual cannot be at peace because they have mentally and emotionally displaced themselves to a moment that does not exist. They are absent from themselves. Guilt, on the other hand, is a fixation on the past. A scene, a word, an action, or an omission is relived, and a renewed emotional charge is assigned to it. The subconscious does not distinguish that it has already happened. It only feels that it is happening again. In this way, the individual punishes themselves repeatedly, reactivates judgment, and renews the wound. But in all cases, fear, anxiety, guilt, the pattern is the same. Suffering arises from a temporal fracture, from having left the only place where healing is possible, the now. No psychological torment can survive in a fully inhabited present. This is a spiritual law confirmed by mystics, sages, and therapists of all traditions. The now, when inhabited with total consciousness, dissolves the residues of the past and severs the illusions of the future. No shadow can persist in direct light. No echo remains when the sound ceases. The now needs no explanation. It needs no excuses. It is a field of pure power where all that is non-essential fades away. That is why when someone consults me saying, "I suffer because of this situation," I do not ask what happened. I ask when they are placing it, because that is the key, spiritual diagnosis. You do not suffer from the event, but from the when. If you place a painful memory from 20 years ago in your current emotional field, your body will experience it as if it happened today. If you project a possible misfortune in your mind and repeat it with sufficient intensity, you will live it before it exists. But if you withdraw that projection, if you decide to fold your consciousness back into the now, you will see that most of the time, here and now, nothing is actually happening. The technique I propose to eliminate this distortion is the purifying here and now practice. This technique is not a passive meditation, nor an automatic repetition. It is a firm decision to reposition consciousness in the present moment. It consists of closing your eyes for 3 minutes, breathing consciously, and declaring with your inner voice, "Here and now I am at peace. Here and now nothing is lacking. Here and now the past does not exist. Here and now the future has no power over me." As you do this, you feel your body, your breathing, and you become aware that this moment contains no threat, no memory. It simply is. And in that being, you recognize yourself as free. I have applied this technique with people on the brink of emotional collapse. On one occasion, a woman called me in the middle of a panic attack. Her mind had constructed a catastrophic scenario regarding her health based on vague symptoms and uncertain diagnoses. I said, "We are not going to talk about what could happen. We are going back to the now." I asked her to close her eyes, breathe with me, and repeat the phrases of the purifying here and now practice quietly without hurry. Within 5 minutes, her breathing stabilized. At 10 minutes, her mind was silent. When she finished, she said, "This was not just calm, it was clarity, because the now not only pacifies, the now reveals." This principle can be applied at any moment of the day. Whenever you feel your mind running toward an unresolved past or a feared future, stop. I am not in that time. I am here, and here I am safe. Here I am whole, here I am with God. You do not need hours of meditation. You need conscious interruptions, small acts of presence that return you to your center, because power is not in resisting thought, but in not following it. And if the thought returns, you return as well. You return to the now, to the body, to the inner space where nothing pursues you. This practice, repeated consistently, creates a new vibratory foundation. Your nervous system begins to understand that danger is not in the present, and gradually, the automatic alarm pattern is deactivated. Fear loses its force, guilt loses its argument, anxiety dissolves like a cloud vanishing in the sun. I have seen people reconstruct their emotional health with this practice alone. No medication, no long analytical processes, no complex explanations. Just the daily decision to inhabit the instant, not as evasion, but as recognition. Because the present is not a consolation, it is reality. Everything else is a mental projection that can be cut in the moment. Thus, if you wish to free yourself from negative time, start by identifying each emotion not as a fact, but as a location. Ask yourself, where am I with my consciousness? And if you discover that you are in the past or future, return. Say aloud, "I cancel this displacement. I return to my now, I return to myself." Stay there, even if only for seconds, because those seconds contain more transformative power than years of analysis. In those seconds, you are no longer under hypnosis. You are awake. And being awake, you can choose. You can choose to release, to not respond to habitual stimuli, to not carry yesterday or fear tomorrow. You can choose to see this moment as sufficient, complete, and full of source. And in that lesson, distortion is erased. Programming is deactivated. Your energy is purified. This is how negative time is eliminated, not by fighting it, but by withdrawing your faith from it, because all emotion is an investment of faith. And if you withdraw your faith from the past and future and place it in the now, the entire system reconfigures. You can look at your life without judgment, guilt, or fear. You can simply be here now, free. Chapter 10, Retroactive Visualization. There is a little-known technique, but of extraordinary power, reserved for those who have understood that time is not a rigid line, but a plastic field shaped by consciousness. This technique is called retroactive visualization, and it involves applying an even deeper inversion than usual. Instead of projecting a desired future into the present, it consists of imagining the present as the logical effect of a desired past. In other words, instead of visualizing what you want to happen, you visualize that it happened long ago, and that your current situation is the direct consequence of that past you implant mentally. At first glance, this may seem like an exercise in absurd imagination or a denial of facts, but it is not. It is a tool that uses the mind's narrative structure to program it more effectively. The human mind does not just create images, it needs to justify them. It is not enough to feel prosperous. The subconscious needs a story explaining why you are prosperous. It is not enough to assume health. It needs a narrative to justify that health. And if you do not provide one, it will search for one on its own, usually resorting to the archive of the real past, filled with scarcity, failure, or illness. What this technique does is voluntarily insert a fabricated memory, a desired recollection that justifies the current state you wish to establish, not as a lie, but as narrative medicine, not as a denial of what occurred, but as a reprogramming of what the subconscious believes occurred. You cannot change past facts, but you can change the emotional story your mind built around them. And by doing so, you rewrite the script from which your present is projected. I recall the case of an entrepreneur on the brink of bankruptcy who came to see me after unsuccessfully trying all sorts of marketing strategies, financial advice, and risky investments. His energy was blocked, not due to lack of action, but because of the internal story he kept repeating. "My family has always failed in business." He was confirming that line himself. His present was being dictated by a past encoded as a curse. I proposed the following. Imagine that 5 years ago, you made a brilliant decision that completely changed your financial trajectory. I didn't mean that he just wished for it. I meant he should construct it as a memory. At first, it was difficult. It seemed like fantasy, but I insisted. You do not need it to have actually happened. You need your subconscious to believe it as a structure. I asked him to close his eyes every morning for 3 minutes and visualize a concrete scene. Him signing a strategic agreement with a partner 5 years ago. Not vaguely, but in detail. The desk, the ink of the pen, the expression on the face, the handshake, the internal feeling of security. This scene was to become the emotional origin of his current success, even if it had not yet manifested externally. In parallel, he had to act every day as if that agreement had taken place. He had to assume that his growth had already been planted in that imagined past, and therefore success was logical, inevitable, and justified. In less than 3 months, the man had paid off debts, gained new clients, and expanded his company beyond his expectations, not because he changed his strategy, but because he changed his internal story. He stopped acting like someone escaping a family pattern. He began to act as someone simply following a successful trajectory that had already begun. The key is understanding that the subconscious responds better when desire is rooted in a coherent narrative. If you say, "I want to be successful," but your mind cannot find any reason to justify it, resistance arises. But if you create a memory where that seed was planted, the mind accepts it more easily. The principle of narrative congruence is activated, and the subconscious begins to act in alignment with that implanted past. This is why the technique is not childish. It is highly sophisticated. Retroactive visualization. Exercise. Relax your body and close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths, releasing all tension. Choose a desired state, for example, inner peace, financial success, or harmonious relationships. Create a past scene located 3 to 5 years ago, where you planted the cause of that state. The scene must be concrete, detailed, and emotionally lived. Visualize the scene as if it were a real memory. Do not just see it, feel it. Hear the sounds, notice the objects, enter the body of your past self. Assume that your current situation is the logical effect of that scene. You are not forcing change. You are living the harvest of a seed planted long ago. Mentally declare, "What I experience now is the fruit of what I planted then. It is so, and it will always be so." Repeat this every morning for 21 days. You do not need to change the words each time. The important thing is to maintain the scene as a fixed memory that colonizes your emotional system. If your mind resists and says, "That didn't happen," respond with authority. "This happened in the timeline I choose to live, and my mind has already accepted it." Do not argue with the superficial mind. You do not need to convince it. You need to train the emotional field which dictates attraction. This technique is based on a fundamental principle. The past is as editable as the future, not because the facts can change, but because the meaning we give them can be reprogrammed. And meaning is what generates vibration. That is why 2 people can have the same past event and entirely different destinies, because each narrated their story with a different emotional charge. You can also choose your charge, and in doing so, you choose your future. Do not wait for your life to change to justify your success. Justify your success now by implanting an earlier cause that supports it. Do not become someone who breaks a curse. Become someone who follows a luminous inheritance, even if you created it mentally, because the mental is as real as the physical when assumed with faith. This is the greatness of retroactive visualization. It allows you to live from a story already fulfilled, not as illusion, but as design. You are not a slave to your biography. You are the author of your timeline. And if you decide your present has prosperous roots, your subconscious will activate the fruits, not because you forced them, but because you planted them, even if only in memory. And what is planted with emotion is harvested with certainty. Chapter 11. Life is already fulfilled. There is a profound truth that the intellect cannot reach, but the soul recognizes instantly when it is allowed to listen. You did not come to construct your life. You came to remember it. Everything you long for, everything you seek, everything you project into the future. Health, love, fulfillment, expansion, understanding, peace, are not achievements you must earn step by step, as if climbing a mountain. They are fulfilled, complete, eternal realities that exist right now on a higher plane of consciousness, waiting for you to recognize and accept them. This plane is not a physical place. It is not in another galaxy or another life. It is the eternal level where everything is complete, where there is no lack or delay, where possibility already exists in its perfect form. What you call the future life is only the slow, sequential version, limited by time and judgment. But on the eternal level, the plane of the I am, life does not happen. It is. And that life that is already contains all possible states. You do not have to create it, you have to remember it. Here lies the great spiritual mystery. You are not a doer, you are a rememberer. The human mind, when purified from the obsession with control, becomes a mirror of the eternal self. In this state of purity, it does not struggle to obtain what it desires. It simply brings to the surface what already belongs to it on another level. It does not beg, it does not construct from scarcity. It recognizes, remembers, redeems. This is the higher function of the mind, to be the bridge between the complete plane and the apparent plane. When you understand this, anxiety dissolves, comparison is cancelled, competition ends, because you no longer have to prove anything. You only need to align with the fullness that is already fulfilled in your higher self. You are not a beggar asking for experiences. You are an heir remembering your treasure. Prayer is not a petition to the future. It is an act of spiritual memory. Every time you pray with faith, you are saying, I remember my fullness now. You are not saying, give me. You are saying, remind me who I am. This formula, I remember my fullness now, is a silent key that can open all doors because it instructs your subconscious to withdraw identification with lack, struggle, and time. It says, I no longer need to build myself from emptiness. I am already complete, and now I remember it. This affirmation, if sustained with feeling, has the power to reconfigure perception in minutes. It is not about convincing yourself through repetition, but surrendering to a truth that has always been buried by the noise of the world. I recall the case of a man who, after decades of struggling to find his purpose, came to my office exhausted, directionless, feeling he had failed. I listened carefully, and then calmly said, You have not failed. You only forgot that you were already complete. Your life was already fulfilled before you were born. You only came to remember it step by step. I proposed a simple exercise. Each night before sleep, he should visualize himself in a scene of total fulfillment, not as a future goal, but as an updated memory. He did not have to construct it. He had to uncover it, like finding an old photograph of himself in a forgotten state. The scene had to be clear, detailed, and emotional, a home at peace, a healthy body, a serene mind, a mission accomplished. Everything had to be present in the image. While visualizing it, he had to repeat, I remember my fullness now. A few days later, he wrote me a sentence I keep with reverence. I didn't find a new purpose. I remembered that I was already living it. I just didn't see it. This is what happens when spiritual memory is activated. You do not need to construct a new identity. You only need to awaken the one that already is, because the deep self does not evolve. It reveals itself. And that revelation occurs when the mind relinquishes control and accepts that it is not the origin, but the channel. I invite you now to do this exercise in your own life. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to visualize a scene that represents your life already fulfilled. Not a future fantasy, not an impossible idealization, but a real living image present on another plane, where you are already who you wish to be. Notice the details, feel the emotions, hear the sounds, inhabit the scene as someone recalling a forgotten experience, not as someone fabricating it. And as you do this, repeat softly, I remember my fullness now. I am already who I came to be. Everything has already been fulfilled in me. Do this every night before sleep, when the superficial mind is most relaxed and the subconscious most receptive. This practice will not only give you peace, it will give you direction. Because when you remember your fullness, you stop seeking outside what can only be found within, and you begin to walk not as someone striving, but as someone confirming. Thus, time ceases to be a path to traverse. It becomes a stage where eternal memory is updated step by step. You do not live to reach something. You live to rediscover what you already are. And this is true freedom, not having to create from lack, but being able to manifest from wholeness. And if ever you doubt, if the mind tells you again that something is missing, that you are not yet, that you cannot yet, repeat firmly, I remember my fullness now. Do not let the programming of the world steal your spiritual inheritance. You are not here to ask permission. You are here to express the eternal. And the eternal within you is already complete. Therefore, seek no more. Remember, and in that remembrance, you will see that everything you awaited has already been given. It only remained to awaken. Chapter 12. Eternity is your natural state. In the innermost part of your being, where words cannot reach and thought falls silent, there is a primordial certainty that needs no proof or external evidence. That certainty is that you are not a body, nor a name, nor a story. You are consciousness without beginning or end. Everything else, your memories, your emotions, your achievements, your failures, is a temporary set on the stage of time. But you are neither the stage nor the characters. You are the light that illuminates them, and that light has no beginning and no end. It is eternal. Eternity is not an infinite duration. It is not a prolonged time without end. Eternity is a state outside of time. It is the essential reality where everything occurs simultaneously, without before or after, without cause or effect, without yesterday or tomorrow. In that state, there is no progress, no evolution, no effort. There is fullness, being, pure presence. And that presence, though you may have forgotten it at times, is what you are in essence. What you call time, the sequence of moments that seems to move linearly, is merely a perceptual instrument useful for experiencing diversity, but it is not real in itself. It is a construction of the rational mind, which needs to order events to understand them. In truth, nothing happens before or after. Everything simply is, and you experience it from a specific point of consciousness. That is why, when you awaken to your eternal identity, time dissolves, not because it ceases to exist, but because it loses its power over you. Let me explain this with a parable I've used for years to illustrate this mystery. The parable of the eternal circle. A sage was called to instruct 3 apprentices on the nature of time. He drew a perfect circle in the sand and said, "This is real time. It has no beginning or end. It does not move forward. It does not move backward. It simply is." Then he asked each of them to walk around the circle. The first, while walking, marked each step with a stick, trying to number the path. At the end he said, "Now I understand. Time is a succession of moments, and I advance through them." The second walked the circle but kept stopping. He looked back and pointed. "Here is where it started. Here was the mistake. Here I am now." And he said, "Time is a circular line that forces me to return to the same point." The third did not walk. He sat at the center of the circle, closed his eyes, and after a few minutes said, "I am not inside time. Time rotates around me. I am the unmoving center. I am the eternal witness." The sage smiled and said, "Only one understood the truth, because the one who becomes the center stops rotating, and by stopping rotation, returns to their eternal nature." You have been like the first 2 apprentices for much of your life. You have believed you move along a line of moments, or are trapped in repetitions. But now, are you ready to sit at the center? Now you can remember that time does not contain you. You contain time, and the moment you assume this, a new way of seeing, acting, and being is activated within you. You no longer define yourself by age, memories, or expectations. You define yourself by your eternal being. You need no external proof. You need no confirmation from the world. Eternity is not demonstrated, it is recognized. And your task now is to stop struggling against time and begin living from the awareness that you precede time. You did not come to endure, you came to manifest the eternal in form. When you live from this understanding, everything changes. Loss no longer hurts the same because you know the essential never departs. Goals no longer torment you because you know you do not need to complete anything to be complete. Aging no longer threatens you because your being is ageless. Fear dissolves because fear is born from time, and you no longer live in time. You live from eternity. This eternal awareness is not abstract. It has practical consequences. One who knows themselves as eternal becomes patient, becomes compassionate, stops running, stops competing, stops defending, because they know no one can take from them what they already are. And when you relate to the world from that peace, everything reorganizes. People treat you differently. Events soften. The environment responds to your central vibration, not your superficial words. That is why I now invite you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and repeat the final prayer of this book, which is also the starting point for a new life. Do not repeat it as someone hoping for a miracle. Repeat it as someone awakening from a long sleep. Repeat it as an act of identity, as someone signing with their being. I am the I am without beginning or end. Nothing is lacking. Nothing threatens me. Nothing conditions me. I exist before time, beyond form, free from all sequence. I am the eternal witness, the unmoving center, the light that observes without being touched. I remember my eternity now, and from this eternal state, I bless every moment as an expression of my being. This prayer is not an end. It is the beginning of a new way of inhabiting time, not as a slave, not as a victim, but as a creator. For you did not come to pass through life, you came to manifest the eternal in every moment. And now you know it. Now you can walk in the world knowing that you are not in a race, you are in a dance, you are not in a countdown, you are in a progressive revelation of what you already are. And that eternal, pure, full present self is the one who writes, observes, and lives beyond time forever. Epilogue, time written from within. You have reached the end of this journey, but what concludes is not a reading, but an old way of understanding your life. What ends here is not a book, but an illusion, the illusion that you are a being conditioned by a sequence you do not control, that time drags you like a blind river, that your story was written outside of you. Today, you have remembered, not learned, that this idea is false, and moreover dangerous, because it deprives you of the power you were endowed with before the beginning. You are not a slave of time. You are not bound to the past nor condemned by the future. You are the silent author of every sequence, and you are that not because you dominate or control clocks, but because you recognize from the innermost part of your being that the only authority over time is in your consciousness. When you understand that every temporal perception arises within you, and that you can invert, dissolve, or rewrite any narrative line through a deep decision of your creative mind, an unlimited field of transformation opens before you. What once seemed irreversible becomes editable. What seemed distant draws near. What hurt vanishes. Not because the world changes magically, but because you have ceased to perceive it from the timeline and have begun to inhabit it from conscious eternity. You have learned to see your story not as a prison, but as a blank page. And this is the greatest achievement of any embodied soul, to remember that it is free. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is fixed beyond your dominant mental state, and that state can be modified in this very moment. You no longer need external validation. You no longer need others to tell you if you can or cannot rewrite your path. You are the validation. You are the authority. You are the point of origin. And when you accept this without hesitation, all opposing forces lose their power. Because no calendar can oppose an awakened consciousness, now you know you can implant new memories that justify your peace. You can rewrite your past from the light of the present. You can bring your fulfilled future into the now. You can look at fear, guilt, and anxiety and say, I am not in that time. You can choose not to participate in the collective hypnosis of suffering. Above all, you can walk through the world with a dignity that cannot be explained because it does not come from achievements but from spiritual memory, the memory that you have always been eternal. So wait for no more signs, expect no ideal conditions, wait for no permission from life. You already have it. You give it. Time is no longer your enemy, your judge, or your excuse. Time is your tool, your raw material, your invisible canvas. Every thought, every image you hold, every emotion you choose is a brushstroke on that canvas. The world does not push you, you project it. And if you decide now to write your time from within, from your eternal center, from your inner authority, the story you once feared will become the book you always dreamed of reading. Not because events change, but because you have awakened to the one fact that changes everything. You are the I am without beginning or end, and from that I am, time bends. It does not command. It serves. So be it. It is. It will be.